Hyun-woo walked through the long hallway of Nexus Prime Station. His black shoes made soft sounds on the metal floor. Behind him, his aide Bo-Ra carried a heavy bag full of data tablets and documents. They had been preparing for this day for months, but Hyun-woo still felt nervous. The Galactic Council chamber was huge. The ceiling was so high that Hyun-woo could barely see the top. Around the room, different alien species sat in their special seats. Each seat was made for their body type. The bird-like Kavari had tall perches. The crystal beings called Nethys had glowing platforms. The insect-like Zephyrians had curved shells they could hide in. Hyun-woo took his place at the human section. It was much smaller than the others. Humans had only been part of the council for 30 years. All the other species had been members for hundreds or thousands of years. This made humans the baby species, and everyone treated them that way. Speaker. Veltaran floated to the center of the room. The crystal being's body caught the light and threw rainbow colors everywhere. When Veltaran spoke, the voice came from somewhere inside the crystal body, making it sound hollow and cold. Today we discuss new rules for the human species, Veltaran announced. These rules will help keep peace in the galaxy. Bo-Ra leaned close to Hyun-woo and whispered, "Here we go again." Hyun-woo nodded. He had heard this before. Every few months, the council made new rules that somehow only affected humans. The other species never had limits put on them. Veltaran continued reading from a floating screen. First, humans must give all advanced starship designs to the council. These ships are too dangerous for a young species to have. Hyun-woo felt his jaw tighten. Human ships were actually better than most alien ships. Human engineers had found ways to make them faster and stronger, but the council wanted to take that technology away. Second, Veltaran said, humans can only build colonies on farming worlds. No mining planets, no research stations, no military bases. This was worse than Hyun-woo expected. Farming worlds were the least valuable planets in the galaxy. The good planets with rare metals and energy sources would be kept for the older species. Fleet Marshal Kexdar stood up from his perch. The Kavari was covered in bright red feathers and had a sharp beak like a hawk. When he spoke, his voice was high and screechy. Humans breed too fast, Kexdar said. If we let them expand freely, they will take over whole star systems. These new rules will control their population. Elder Keth Mirren spoke next. The Nethys was an energy being that looked like a floating cloud of blue light. Humans are also too aggressive. They ask too many questions. They want to change things that have worked fine for thousands of years. Collective Prime 7 made a buzzing sound that meant agreement. The Zephyrian looked like a giant ant with multiple arms and eyes. The hive mind agrees. Humans cause chaos wherever they go. Structure must be maintained. Hyun-woo listened to each species complain about humanity. It was always the same complaints. Humans were too young, too fast, too curious, too dangerous. But Hyun-woo knew the real reason for these new rules. Humans were becoming too successful. In just 30 years, humans had built some of the best technology in the galaxy. Human farms produced more food than anyone else. Human factories made products that everyone wanted to buy. Human scientists made discoveries that the older species had missed for centuries. The council was scared. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they forgot how to compete. Instead of trying to do better, they wanted to hold humans back. Bo-Ra handed Hyun-woo a data tablet. On the screen was a message that just arrived from Earth. It was from President Da-Yoon herself. The message was only 2 words. Do it. Hyun-woo stood up slowly. The chamber became quiet. All eyes and sensors turned toward him. "Speaker Veltaran," Hyun-woo said in a clear voice. "The human delegation has heard enough." Veltaran's crystal body flickered with surprise. "Ambassador Hyun-woo, you have not been given permission to speak." "I don't need permission," Hyun-woo replied. "Not anymore." He looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked confused. Others looked angry. But Hyun-woo wasn't afraid anymore. "For 30 years, humanity has tried to be a good member of this council," he continued. "We followed your rules. We shared our technology. We asked for nothing but fair treatment." Fleet Marshal Kekstar made an angry screech. "Humans have been treated very fairly. You have been protected and guided by your betters." Hyun-woo turned to face the Kavari warrior. "Protected from what? Guided toward what? Every rule you make limits what humans can do. Every trade deal favors the older species. Every vote goes against human interests." Elder Kethmiran's blue light grew brighter. "Young species must learn patience. Wisdom comes with age." "Does it?" Hyun-woo asked. "Because I see species that are thousands of years old, and they're still making the same mistakes. They still think that power comes from holding others down instead of building them up." Bo-Ra stood up beside Hyun-woo. She activated her data tablet and started recording. This moment needed to be saved for history. "The truth is simple," Hyun-woo said. "You don't want humans as partners. You want us as servants. You want our technology, our food, our products. But you don't want to give us anything in return except more rules and restrictions." Speaker Veltaran's voice became colder. "Ambassador, Hyun-woo, you will sit down and show respect for this council." "No," Hyun-woo said firmly. "I will not." The chamber erupted in angry voices and sounds. Different species started shouting at each other and at the humans. But Hyun-woo wasn't finished. "I came here today thinking we might find a compromise," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I thought maybe we could work together, but I see now that was never possible." He picked up his bag and started walking toward the exit. Bo-Ra followed right behind him. "You want to treat humans like children?" Hyun-woo called back. "Fine, but children grow up, and when they do, they leave home." Speaker Veltaran floated after them. "Where do you think you are going? This session is not over." Hyun-woo stopped at the chamber door and turned around one last time. "Yes, it is. This is humanity's last session with the Galactic Council. We are withdrawing our membership, effective immediately." The silence that followed was complete. No species had ever left the Council before. It was unthinkable. "You cannot simply leave." Elder Kethmiran's blue light was flickering rapidly. "No one leaves the Council. It has never been done." "It's being done now," Bo-Ra said quietly. Fleet Marshal Kekstar spread his wings in a threatening display. "If humans leave the Council, you will have no protection. Other species will destroy you." Hyun-woo smiled for the first time that day. "Marshal Kekstar, if you think humans need protection from other species, then you haven't been paying attention to what we've been building while you've been making rules to stop us." As they walked out of the chamber, Bo-Ra pressed a button on her tablet. Across human space, on every human world and ship and station, the same message appeared. "Operation Exodus begins now." The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans decided to walk away. Dr. Jinnah stood on the bridge of the human ship Defiance. Through the large window, she could see Nexus Prime Station getting smaller and smaller as they flew away. 3 days had passed since Ambassador Hyan Wu walked out of the council chamber. Now Jinnah was watching the galaxy's economy fall apart. The first signs of trouble started within hours of humanity's withdrawal. Jinnah had been Earth's trade liaison for 10 years. She knew exactly how much the galaxy depended on human work and products, but even she was surprised by how fast everything went wrong. Her communication screen was filled with emergency messages from across the galaxy. Each message told the same story. Systems were failing, supplies were running out, and nobody knew how to fix anything without human help. Dr. Jinnah, called Lieutenant Tae Min from the navigation station. We're getting another distress signal from the Zephyrian home system. Their food shipments are 3 days late. Jinnah pulled up the trade records on her tablet. The numbers told an interesting story. For the past 15 years, humans had quietly become the backbone of galactic trade. It happened so slowly that nobody noticed until it was too late. Human-built. Quantum processors powered 67% of all galactic communications. Every time an alien made a phone call or sent a message, they were probably using human technology. Human agricultural techniques fed over half the Council's worlds. Human logistics networks transported 80% of all interstellar cargo. The aliens had been so busy making rules to control humans that they never realized how much they needed human services. Jinnah's screen beeped with an incoming call. The face that appeared belonged to Trade Minister Wexelar from the Nethys homeworld. The energy being looked very worried. Dr. Jinnah, thank goodness I reached you, Wexelar said quickly. There has been a terrible mistake. Our automated systems have stopped working. We need human technicians immediately. I'm sorry, Minister, Jinnah replied calmly. All human technical teams were evacuated from Council space 2 days ago. They're no longer available. Wexlar's blue light flickered with panic. But our entire communication network runs on human-designed processors. Without maintenance, the whole system will crash. Jinnah nodded. Yes, I know. We designed those systems. We also trained your people how to maintain them. But your people said human technology was too complicated for Nethys to understand. They preferred to just hire humans to do all the work. This is different, Wexelar pleaded. This is an emergency. Surely we can make a deal. With who? Jinnah asked. Humans are no longer members of the Council. We have no official relationship with Nethys anymore. The call ended abruptly as Wexelar's communication system failed completely. Commander So Young walked over to Jinnah's station. The Admiral was in charge of the human evacuation fleet. Her job was to make sure every human got safely out of Council space. How are the evacuation numbers looking? So Young asked. Jinnah pulled up another screen. Phase 1 is complete. All human personnel have been extracted from Council space. Every technician, farmer, engineer, doctor, and scientist is out. The aliens kept nothing that belonged to us. And they took nothing that belonged to them, So Young added with a small smile. This was the most important part of Operation Exodus. When humans left, they took everything they had built or improved. Every piece of human technology was removed or shut down. Every human-designed system was locked, so aliens couldn't use it. But humans left behind all the alien technology and resources they had been using. They took only what was theirs by right. Another message appeared on Jinnah's screen. This one was from the Zephyrian Collective. The insect-like aliens were known for being very organized and efficient. But now, they were panicking. Human command, the message began. Collective Prime 7 requires immediate assistance. Our breeding worlds are experiencing food shortage crisis. Human agricultural shipments have not arrived as scheduled. Our population will begin starving in 14 days without human food supplies. Jinnah shook her head. The Zephyrians had some of the richest worlds in the galaxy. They had perfect conditions for growing food, but they had become lazy over the centuries. It was easier to buy food from human farms than to grow their own. Human farmers had developed amazing techniques for growing more food with less land and water. They could make crops grow on planets where other species saw only rocks and sand. The Zephyrians had been buying human food for so long that they forgot how to feed themselves. Should I respond to their message? Asked Lieutenant Bo-Ra, who was working at the communications station. Send them our standard reply, Jinnah said. All commercial contracts between humans and Council species ended when humanity withdrew from the Council. They should contact their local Council representative for assistance. Bo-Ra smiled as she sent the message. Everyone knew the Council had no way to replace human food production quickly. It would take years to rebuild the agricultural systems that humans had been running. The next emergency call came from a Kavari mining world. The bird-like warrior species were proud of their strength and fighting ability. But their mining operations depended completely on human logistics networks. This is Mining Chief Torkan of Extraction World 7, the Kavari screeched over the communication system. Our cargo ships have not arrived to pick up our mineral exports. We need human transport. Ships immediately! Jinnah looked at the shipping records. Extraction. World 7 produced rare metals that were used in starship engines throughout the galaxy, but the planet was so far from major trade routes that only human ships could make the journey profitable. Human logistics companies had spent decades building networks that connected every inhabited world in the galaxy. They found ways to deliver goods faster and cheaper than anyone else. Other species had tried to compete, but they could never match human efficiency. Now, all those cargo ships were flying back to human space. The mining worlds would have no way to ship their products to buyers. The factory worlds would have no way to get raw materials. The whole galactic economy would grind to a halt. Send Chief Torkan the same response, Jinnah told Bo-Ra. Contract. Terminated due to Council withdrawal. Commander So Young was reading reports from the evacuation fleet. The aliens are starting to understand the situation, she said. We're intercepting communications between Council worlds. They're all asking the same question. How did humans become so important to everything? Jinnah laughed softly. They never paid attention. For 30 years, they saw humans as junior partners who should be grateful for any work they could get. They gave us all the jobs they thought were boring or beneath them. Transportation, maintenance, agriculture, technical support. And we became very good at those jobs, So Young added. We became essential, Jinnah corrected. There's a difference between being good at something and being the only ones who can do it properly. The truth was that humans had a natural talent for solving problems and improving systems. While other species were content to do things the same way for thousands of years, humans always looked for better methods. They made everything more efficient, more reliable, and more profitable. The aliens had been happy to let humans do all the hard work while they enjoyed the benefits. But they never bothered to learn how the systems worked or how to maintain them. They just assumed humans would always be there to take care of everything. Another message arrived, this time from Elder Kethmiran himself. The ancient Nethys was one of the most powerful beings in the Council. His species had existed for over 1,000,000 years. But now he sounded desperate. Dr. Jinnah? I speak directly to you as elder of the Nethys civilization. We are willing to discuss terms for continued human technical support. Name your price." Jinnah deleted the message without responding. The time for negotiations had passed. Humans had tried to negotiate fairly for 30 years. Every time, the Council had demanded more restrictions and offered fewer benefits. Now the Council was learning what happened when they pushed too hard. They had treated humans like servants who could be ordered around and taken for granted, but servants could quit. And when they did, their former masters had to learn how to do everything for themselves. "Doctor," called Lieutenant Tae-min, "we're receiving a priority message from Admiral Jae-hyun. The Council is mobilizing military forces." Jinnah wasn't surprised. When diplomacy failed, species like the Kavari always turned to violence. They thought they could force humans to come back and fix their problems. They were about to learn that humans had been preparing for this possibility too. The galaxy was discovering that walking away from an abusive relationship was just the beginning. The real test would come when the abusers realized they could no longer control their victims. Fleet Marshal Kexdar spread his red feathers wide as he addressed the emergency council session. The Kavari warrior was angry, and when Kavari got angry, they showed it with their whole body. His sharp beak clicked repeatedly as he spoke. "These humans are playing games with us," Kexdar screeched to the assembled aliens. "They think they can threaten the council with their little temper tantrum. One show of force will bring them crawling back where they belong." Speaker Veltarin's crystal form flickered nervously. "Marshal, perhaps we should try diplomatic solutions first. Military action against humans might be unwise." Kexdar's head tilted sharply, the way predatory birds looked at prey. "Unwise?" "Speaker, humans have been council members for only 30 years. My species has been warriors for 30,000 years. What could these soft mammals possibly do against the combined might of the council fleet?" Elder Kethmiran floated. Closer, his blue energy form pulsing with uncertainty. "The humans did build impressive cargo ships, but we have never seen them build military vessels. They focused on trade and agriculture." "Exactly my point," Kexdar said, his voice rising to an excited screech. "Humans are merchants and farmers. They have no warrior tradition, no battle experience. Their ships are built for carrying grain, not fighting wars." Collective Prime 7 made a buzzing sound of agreement. The Zephyrian hive mind had been calculating odds and probabilities for the past hour. Mathematical analysis supports the Marshal's position. Human population and industrial capacity are insufficient to resist Council military force. Probability of human surrender after minimal display of power, 93%. The vote was quick and unanimous. The Council would send a joint military fleet to human space, not to destroy humans, but to force them back into line. A few destroyed ships and space stations would remind humans of their proper place in the galactic order. 3 days later, Fleet Marshal Kexdar stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Talon of Wrath. Around him, 200 Council warships, prepared to jump to hyperspace. The fleet included Kavari battle carriers, Nethys energy lance cruisers, and Zephyrian swarm fighters. "Marshal," reported Navigation Chief Mordak, "fleet is ready for jump to the human border system of New Busan. Intelligence reports minimal human presence there." Kexdar nodded with satisfaction. New Busan was a perfect target. It was an important human trade hub, but not heavily defended. Destroying it would send a clear message without causing too much damage. The humans would see Council strength and beg for mercy. "All ships, initiate hyperspace jump," Kexdar commanded. The fleet disappeared into the swirling tunnel of hyperspace. The journey to New Busan took 6 hours. When they emerged, Kexdar expected to see a busy system full of human cargo ships and space stations. Instead, he found almost nothing. The system was nearly empty. A few automated mining platforms drifted silently around the outer planets. Some communication satellites orbited the main star. But there were no cargo ships, no space stations, no signs of human activity. Scan for human vessels, Kexdar ordered. Marshal, reported Sensor Chief Kolvar. I detect one human ship. A small corvette near the 4th planet. No other human signatures in the system. Kexdar stared at the tactical display. A single human corvette against 200 council. Warships? It was either a trap or a joke. Open communications with the human vessel, he commanded. The main screen flickered, and a human face appeared. The woman looked young by human standards, with short black hair and calm dark eyes. She wore a simple military uniform without decorations. This is Captain Yu Jin of the human vessel Soul's Pride, she said in a steady voice. Council fleet, you are trespassing in human space. Leave immediately or face the consequences. The bridge crew burst into laughter. Several Kavari officers made screeching sounds of amusement. The idea of a single small ship threatening an entire fleet was absurd. Kexdar leaned forward, his beak almost touching the communication screen. Human Captain, I am Fleet Marshal Kexdar of the Kavari Defense Force. You are facing 200 warships. Surrender immediately, or we will destroy your vessel. Captain Yu Jin's expression didn't change. Marshal, this is your final warning. Leave human space now, or we will consider your presence an act of war. Act of war? Kexdar screeched with laughter. Little human, your ship masses maybe 5,000 tons. My flagship alone masses 250,000 tons. You have no weapons that can threaten us. You have no shields that can protect you. What exactly do you think you can do? Yu Jin smiled for the first time. It wasn't a friendly smile. Marshal, you're about to find out what humans have been building while you've been busy making rules to control us. Enough of this, Kexdar snapped. All ships, target the human corvette, minimal weapons only. I want to capture it intact so we can study their technology. Marshal, Sensor Chief Kolvar called out, the human ship is moving. On the tactical display, the small human corvette began accelerating toward the Council fleet. This was unexpected. Human cargo ships always tried to run away from danger, but this military vessel was flying directly at 200 enemy warships. Is the human captain insane? Asked Navigation Chief Mordak. Probably, Kexdar replied. Human psychology is unstable. They make irrational decisions when stressed, target their engines and disable them before they can ram us. But the human ship was moving faster than any council vessel could match. Within seconds, it was close enough to the Kavari flagship to be considered a collision threat. Emergency maneuvers! Kexdar shouted. All ships scatter formation! The Soul's Pride flew straight at the Talon of Wrath without changing course. At the last possible moment, when collision seemed certain, something impossible happened. The space around the human corvette began to bend and twist. Reality itself seemed to stretch and warp. The massive Kavari flagship, which had seemed solid and indestructible, began to tear apart like paper. What is happening? Kexdar screeched as his ship's hull started to crack and split. Captain Yu Jin's voice came over the communication system one final time. Localized gravity weapon, Marshal. We learned how to make artificial black holes. Small ones that only last for a few seconds. But that's all we need. The Talon of Wrath broke in half. The two pieces spun away from each other, atmosphere and debris streaming into space. Kexdar and most of his crew died instantly when the ship's reactor exploded. The rest of the Council fleet stared in shock at the destruction. A single human corvette had destroyed the most powerful warship in the Kavari fleet using some kind of impossible weapon. "This is Admiral Jae Hyun of the human vessel Incheon to all Council ships." The voice came from everywhere at once. The Council fleet spun around, looking for the source of the transmission. They found it quickly. Space around them was filling with ships. But these weren't the cargo vessels and exploration ships that Council members had seen before. These were sleek, deadly-looking warships that seemed designed for one purpose: killing enemy vessels as efficiently as possible. The human dreadnought Incheon was 3 times larger than any Council ship. Its hull was covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. Other human vessels appeared around it: cruisers, destroyers, frigates, and fighter squadrons. Admiral Jae Hyun's face appeared on every Council ship's communication screen at the same time. He was an older human with gray hair and cold eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. "Council fleet, you have violated human territorial space and destroyed one of our vessels after being warned to leave. This constitutes an act of war under both human and galactic law." Navigation Chief Mordak, who had taken command after Kexdar's death, tried to sound brave. "Human Admiral, we outnumber your fleet. We still have over 190 warships." "You had 199 warships when you arrived," Admiral Jae Hyun replied calmly. "Captain Yoo-jin reduced that number by 1 before your ships could react. She also demonstrated what happens when you ignore human warnings." Elder Kethamiran's voice came over the fleet communication channel. "Admiral, surely we can negotiate. The Council wishes no war with humanity." "The time for negotiation ended when you opened fire on a human vessel," Jae Hyun said. "But I am not unreasonable. I will give you the same chance we gave Fleet Marshal Kexdar. You have exactly 10 minutes to leave human space. Anyone still here after that will be considered an enemy combatant." "And if we refuse?" asked Collective Prime 7, from the Zephyrian command ship. Admiral Jae Hyun smiled. It was the same cold smile Captain Yoo-jin had shown before destroying the Kavari flagship. "Then you'll discover what other weapons humans have been developing while you were busy underestimating us." The Council fleet didn't wait 10 minutes. They jumped to hyperspace after 7. As the last alien ship disappeared, Captain Yoo-jin opened a channel to Admiral Jae Hyun. "Admiral, should we pursue them?" "No need, Captain. They'll spread the word about what they saw here. The galaxy is about to learn that humans don't make empty threats. The Battle of New Busan lasted less than 15 minutes, but its effects would reshape galactic politics forever." 2 weeks after the disaster at New Busan, Speaker Veltaran arrived at Kepler Station flying a ship marked with diplomatic immunity flags. The Crystal Being's vessel was small and unmarked, nothing like the grand ship's Council leaders usually traveled in. This was meant to be a secret meeting. General Minho watched from the station's command center as the alien ship requested permission to dock. The human officer was in charge of Kepler Station, which served as humanity's main listening post for monitoring Council space. Minho had expected this visit, but he hadn't expected it to come so soon. "General," called Communications Officer Lee from her station, "the alien vessel is transmitting Council Speaker identity codes. Speaker Veltaran wants to meet with Ambassador Hyun-woo." Minho nodded slowly. "Grant them docking permission, but keep full security protocols in place. Search their ship for weapons and recording devices. This meeting stays completely secret. Yes, sir. Should I contact Ambassador Hyunwoo? He's already here, Minho replied. We've been preparing for this moment since the fleet left New Busan. An hour later, Speaker Veltaran walked through Kepler Station's corridors under heavy guard. The crystal being moved slowly, their rainbow-colored body flickering with what humans had learned to recognize as stress. Behind Veltaran walked two Nethys energy beings who served as advisors and bodyguards. The meeting room was simple and functional. A metal table, a few chairs, and a single window showing the stars outside. Ambassador Hyunwoo sat at one end of the table with Colonel Yoonji beside him. The colonel was humanity's top military advisor, and her presence sent a clear message. Humans were no longer interested in purely diplomatic solutions. When Veltaran entered the room, the crystal being stopped suddenly. For several seconds, they just stood there, looking at the two humans. Then, in a move that shocked everyone present, Speaker Veltaran lowered themselves to the floor in a position that meant submission and respect in their culture. Ambassador Hyunwoo, Veltaran said, their voice quieter than usual. I come before you not as Speaker of the Council, but as a representative of dying civilizations. Our worlds are failing. Our people are suffering. Please, we need your help. Hyunwoo looked at Colonel Yoonji, then back at the alien leader. In 30 years of dealing with the Council, he had never seen any of them show this kind of desperation. Speaker, please stand up, Hyunwoo said gently. Let's discuss this as equals. Veltaran rose slowly and took a seat across from the humans. I will be direct, Ambassador. The situation in Council space is worse than we expected. The Nethys have already lost 3 colonies to system failures. Their population cannot survive without human technical support. Colonel Yoonji pulled out a data tablet and placed it on the table. We know about the colony failures. We also know about the food riots on Zephyrian worlds and the cargo ship crashes in Kavari space. Our intelligence networks are still very active. Then you know how desperate our situation has become, Veltaran continued. The economic collapse is spreading faster than we can control. Without human support, entire species may face extinction within months. Hyunwoo leaned back in his chair. Speaker, with respect, this is exactly what we warned you would happen. For years, human representatives told the Council that making us dependent on each other was dangerous if the relationship wasn't equal. You ignored those warnings. We made mistakes, Veltaran admitted. We underestimated human capabilities and importance to galactic civilization. We were arrogant. Yes, you were, Colonel Yoonji said bluntly. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is that you weren't just arrogant. You were abusive. You used humanity's desire to help and cooperate against us. Every time, we proved ourselves useful. You created new rules to control us. Veltaran's crystal form flickered rapidly. Colonel, I understand human anger, but surely we can find a solution that benefits everyone. The Council is prepared to make significant concessions. What kind of concessions? Hyunwoo asked. We can remove the restrictions on human expansion. We can allow humans to keep their advanced technology. We can even give humanity a permanent seat on the Council Leadership Board. Hyunwoo and Colonel Yoonji exchanged glances. These were the same things humans had been asking for during 30 years of negotiations. The Council had refused every request, claiming humans weren't ready for such responsibilities. That's interesting, Hyunwoo said carefully. But I notice you said allow humans to do these things. You're still thinking in terms of the Council granting permissions to humanity. What do you mean? Veltarin asked, clearly confused. Colonel Yunji leaned forward. Speaker, humans don't need your permission anymore. We've proven we can survive and prosper without the Council. We're expanding into new star systems, developing advanced technologies, and building alliances with species who were never Council members. But surely humans don't want to see the galaxy descend into chaos, Veltarin pleaded. Billions of beings will die if our civilizations collapse. This was the heart of the matter. Humans did care about preventing suffering and death. It was part of their nature to want to help others. The Council was counting on this compassion to bring humans back under their control. Of course, we don't want beings to die, Hyunwoo said, but we also won't return to an abusive relationship just to prevent consequences that were caused by the abuser's actions. What are humanities? Terms? Veltarin asked quietly. Hyunwoo pulled out his own data tablet and placed it next to Colonel Yunji's. Our terms are simple but non-negotiable. First, the Galactic Council is dissolved completely. It will be replaced with a new organization based on equality and mutual benefit. Dissolved? Veltarin's voice rose in shock. The Council has existed for over 50,000 years. And in those 50,000 years, it became corrupt and abusive, Colonel Yunji replied. Humanity will not join any organization that claims inherent authority over other species. Second, Hyunwoo continued, the new galactic organization will be based on contribution, not age or military power. Species that contribute more to galactic civilization will have more influence in decision-making. Veltarin was quiet for a long moment. That would completely change the balance of power in the galaxy. Yes, it would, Hyunwoo agreed. Species that have been coasting on ancient achievements would have to prove their current value. Species that have been held back would have a chance to show what they can really do. Third, Colonel Unji added, all previous territorial restrictions are void. Every species has the right to expand and develop as they see fit, as long as they don't harm others. The Kavari will never accept these terms, Veltarin protested. Their entire culture is based on military dominance. Then the Kavari will have to adapt or be left behind, Hyunwoo said firmly. The galaxy is changing, Speaker. Species can change with it or cling to old ways and become irrelevant. Veltarin stood up and walked to the window. For several minutes, the crystal being stared out at the stars without speaking. Finally, they turned back to the humans. What about emergency aid? Veltarin asked. Can humanity provide temporary assistance while we consider these terms? No, Colonel Yunji said immediately. Humanitarian aid creates dependency, which leads back to the same problems. Every species needs to learn to take care of itself. But the suffering, Veltarin began, was caused by your own policies, Hyunwoo interrupted. You created this crisis by making your civilizations dependent on human labor while refusing to treat humans as equals. We offered to teach your people how to maintain their own systems. You preferred to just hire humans to do everything. We can provide technical information, Colonel Yunji added. Instruction manuals, training programs, system specifications. But we won't send human workers to fix problems that aliens should have learned to handle themselves. Veltarin sat back, down heavily. These terms, they would mean the end of the galactic order as we know it. Good, Hyunwoo said. That order was built on inequality and exploitation. It needed to end. How long do we have to decide? Veltarin asked. Colonel Yunji checked her tablet. According to our projections, most Council worlds will face critical system failures within 60 days. After that, the collapse becomes irreversible. So I'd say you have about 50 days to make a decision. And if the Council rejects these terms, then you'll face the consequences of your own choices, Hyunwoo replied. Humanity will continue building relationships with species who want genuine partnerships. We'll help them develop and prosper. The Council species can either join this new galaxy or watch it develop without them. Speaker Veltaran gathered their advisors and prepared to leave. At the door, they turned back one final time. Ambassador, I must ask, is there any possibility of compromise? Any way to preserve some aspects of the current system? Hyunwoo stood up and walked over to the crystal being. Speaker, for 30 years, humans tried to compromise with the Council. Every compromise resulted in more restrictions and less respect. We're done compromising with bullies. We learned something important during this crisis, Colonel Yoonji added. Walking away from an abusive relationship isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about forcing the abuser to face the consequences of their actions. Sometimes that's the only way they learn to change. As Veltaran's 6 months after Speaker Veltaran's desperate visit to Kepler Station, President Da-Yun stood before the newly formed Galactic Assembly. The meeting hall was completely different from the old council chambers. Instead of elevated seats that showed which species were considered more important, every delegation sat at the same level. Instead of ancient symbols of power, the walls displayed images of cooperation and progress. President Da-Un looked out at the assembled delegates. Some faces were familiar from the old council. Others belonged to species that had never been allowed to join the galactic community before. The change was dramatic, but it had not been easy. 6 months ago, President Da-Un began, humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. We did not do this out of anger, though we had reason to be angry. We did not do this out of hatred, though we had been treated unfairly. We did this because we believed the galaxy could be better. In the Kavari section, Flight Leader Korthon listened carefully to the president's words. The bird warrior had taken command of his species delegation after Fleet Marshal Kexdar died at New Busan. Unlike his predecessor, Korthon had learned to respect human capabilities. The old council was based on a simple idea, President Da-Yun continued. Some species were naturally superior to others. Age meant wisdom. Military strength meant leadership. Traditional ways meant stability. Elder Keth Miran's blue energy form flickered nervously in the Nethys section. The ancient being had opposed humanity's terms for months before finally accepting them. Even now he struggled with the new reality where his species' million-year history meant less than their current contributions. But we have learned something different, President Da-Un said. True wisdom comes from solving problems, not from avoiding them. Real leadership comes from lifting others up, not from holding them down. And stability comes from systems that can adapt and grow, not from traditions that resist all change. Dr. Wu Jin, Humanities Science Director, sat in the front row taking notes. He had been working with alien scientists for months, sharing human research and learning from other species discoveries. The cooperation had produced amazing results that no single species could have achieved alone. The Galactic Assembly operates on different principles than the old council, President Da-Un explained. Every member species has a voice. Every species has the right to expand and develop freely, and every species earns influence through contribution, not through claims of superiority. This was the revolutionary change that had transformed galactic politics. Under the old council system, the Kavari had the most military influence, the Nethys had the most scientific influence, and the Zephyrians had the most economic influence, all based on their ancient achievements. Under the new assembly system, influence was earned through current contributions to galactic civilization. Species that shared knowledge gained scientific influence. Species that provided aid gained humanitarian influence. Species that created trade opportunities gained economic influence. The results had been surprising. Some species that had been powerful under the old system found themselves with less influence. Other species that had been ignored or suppressed suddenly became important players. Flight Leader Korthon stood up when President Daun recognized the Kavari delegation. President Daun, the Kavari Republic wishes to address the Assembly. This was another major change. The proud warrior species had abandoned their old empire structure and become a republic. The transformation hadn't been easy, and many Kavari still struggled with the new ways. The Kavari acknowledge our past mistakes, Korthon said in his screechy voice. We believed that strength meant dominating others. We thought that winning required others to lose. We were wrong. Murmurs rippled through the assembly hall. No Kavari leader had ever admitted error so publicly before. We have learned from human pilots and tacticians, Korthon continued. They showed us that true strength comes from precision, not brute force. They taught us that the best victories are those where everyone benefits. In the human section, Captain Eugene smiled slightly. She had been working with Kavari pilots for months, teaching them advanced combat techniques. The bird warriors were quick learners once they abandoned their old prejudices. Elder Kathamaran spoke next. The Nethys Collective also acknowledges the wisdom of the new system. For too long, we relied on our age and past achievements instead of focusing on current progress. Working with Engineer Sang-Woo and other human scientists has reminded us of the joy of discovery. Engineer Sang-Woo nodded from the human delegation. His collaboration with Nethys energy researchers had led to breakthrough technologies that neither species could have developed alone. The partnership showed what was possible when different types of intelligence worked together. The only delegation that remained unhappy was the Zephyrians. Collective Prime 7 had accepted the new system because they had no choice, but their hive mind struggled with concepts like individual initiative and creative thinking. The Zephyrian Collective recognizes the current political reality, Collective Prime 7 announced in their buzzing voice. We will comply with assembly regulations and contribute to galactic stability. President Da-Yun noticed the cold, formal tone. The insect species were cooperating, but they weren't truly embracing the changes. This could be a problem in the future. The Assembly also welcomes new members, President Daun announced, turning to a section of the hall that would have been empty under the old council system. The Altarian delegation stood up. These reptilian beings had been contacted by human exploration ships only 3 months earlier. Under the old council system, it would have taken decades for a new species to be considered for membership. The Altarian Confederation is honored to join the galactic community, declared Prime Minister Zexaloth. We look forward to sharing our knowledge and learning from all member species. Captain Subin, who had made first contact with the Altarians, watched with pride as the new species was formally welcomed. This was how the galaxy should work, new civilizations being embraced rather than excluded. The Assembly has achieved remarkable progress in just 6 months, President Da-Un continued. Trade between member species has increased by 400%. Scientific cooperation has led to 17 major breakthrough discoveries. Military conflicts between member species have dropped to 0. These numbers represented more than just statistics. They showed how much potential had been wasted under the old system. When species were encouraged to compete and cooperate rather than dominate each other, everyone benefited. Dr. Wu Jin stood up when President Da-un recognized him. The Science Directorate reports that our open research sharing program has accelerated technological development across all member species. Technologies that might have taken centuries to develop are being created in months through collaborative effort. This was perhaps the most important change. Under the old council, each species guarded their technology jealously. Only humans had been required to share their discoveries while receiving little in return. Now, all species shared freely and everyone advanced together. Engineer Sang Woo added his report. The Joint Infrastructure Program has connected previously isolated systems to the galactic network. Species that were cut off from trade and communication can now participate fully in galactic civilization. Admiral So Young spoke for the Military Cooperation Program. The mutual defense agreements have created the most stable security situation the galaxy has seen in thousands of years. Instead of building weapons to fight each other, member species are working together to explore new regions and deal with external threats. President Da-un looked around the assembly hall one final time before concluding her address. 6 months ago, many believed that humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council would lead to chaos and conflict. Instead, it led to cooperation and progress. She paused to let the words sink in. We learned that walking away from a bad situation isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the only way to create space for something better. We learned that you don't need permission to build the future you want. You just need the courage to start building. Flight Leader Korthan stood up and began, a slow, rhythmic clapping. The sound was picked up by other delegates until the entire assembly hall echoed with applause. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, President Da-un remained at the podium. Ambassador Hyun-woo approached her with a satisfied smile. "Think it will last?" he asked quietly. "Nothing lasts forever," President Da-un replied. "But this system is designed to adapt and evolve. Unlike the old council, it doesn't depend on keeping things the same." "The Zephyrians are still planning something," Hyun-woo warned. "Our intelligence suggests they're trying to build a coalition of species that want to return to the old ways." President Da-un nodded. "I expected that. Some beings can't accept that their time of dominance is over. But the galaxy has seen what cooperation can accomplish. It will be hard for anyone to convince member species to go back to the old system of oppression." As they left the assembly hall together, both humans knew that their work was far from finished. Building a better galaxy was an ongoing process, not a single event. But they had proven that change was possible when enough people had the courage to walk away from what wasn't. 3 years after humanity's withdrawal from the old Galactic Council, Captain Subin stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Horizons as it approached an unknown star system. Her crew had been traveling for months through the outer rim territories, searching for new forms of life and civilization. "Captain," called Navigation Officer Jun-ho from his station, "we're detecting artificial signals from the third planet. Looks like radio transmissions and basic satellite networks." Subin smiled. After 3 years of exploration, first contact situations still excited her. Each new species brought different perspectives and capabilities that could benefit the entire galactic community. "Take us into orbit around the planet," she ordered, "and prepare the standard first contact protocols." The planet below was beautiful. Blue oceans covered most of the surface, with brown and green continents scattered between them. Cities glowed with artificial lights on the night side. It looked very much like Earth had centuries ago. "Captain," Communications Officer Nari reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. They're asking who we are and what we want." "Put them on the main screen," Subin replied. The face that appeared was reptilian, with green scales and large yellow eyes. But the expression of curiosity and caution was familiar. Every intelligent species showed the same mix of fear and wonder when they first encountered aliens from space. "Greetings," the reptilian being said in their own language. Universal translators converted the words to Korean. "I am Prime Minister Zexaloth of the Altarian Confederation. You are not from our world." "No, we're not," Captain Subin replied gently. "I am Captain Subin of the human vessel New Horizons. We come from a different star system, and we're exploring this region of space. We mean no harm to your people." Prime Minister Zexaloth's eyes widened. "You travel between the stars? How is this possible?" "The same way your people will travel between stars someday," Subin answered. "Through science, technology, and the desire to explore. We'd like to learn about your civilization, and perhaps share knowledge that might help both our peoples." "You would share your knowledge with us?" Zexaloth sounded confused. "But we have nothing of equal value to offer in return." This was a common reaction from newly contacted species. Most civilizations assumed that more advanced aliens would either ignore them completely or try to conquer and exploit them. "Prime Minister, every civilization has something valuable to offer," Subin explained. "Your people have developed solutions to problems we've never faced. You've created art and music and literature that we've never imagined. Knowledge sharing isn't about equal exchange, it's about everyone benefiting together." Over the following, weeks, Captain Subin and her crew learned about Altarian civilization. The reptilian beings had developed a complex society based on scientific research and democratic cooperation. They reminded Subin of humanity in many ways, curious, innovative, and eager to improve their world. "Your species interests us greatly," Prime Minister Zexaloth said during one of their many conversations. "But we must ask, do you represent some galactic government? Do you speak for all space-traveling species?" Subin thought carefully about how to answer. "We represent the Galactic Assembly, which is an organization of many different species working together. But we don't govern other species. Each member civilization makes its own choices about how to live and develop. And if we chose not to join this assembly, that would be perfectly acceptable," Subin replied. "Some species prefer to remain independent, and we respect that choice. Membership is always voluntary." This answer seemed to surprise Zexaloth. "You would not force us to join? You would not demand tribute or submission?" "Never," Subin said firmly. "The assembly was founded on the principle that every species has the right to determine its own future. We offer friendship and cooperation, nothing more." Prime Minister Zexaloth conferred with other Altarian leaders for several days before making their decision. "Captain Subin, the Altarian Confederation would be honored to join your galactic assembly. We accept your offer of friendship and cooperation." As the New Horizons prepared to return to assembly space with news of the new contact, Captain Subin received a priority message from Earth. President Da Yun's face appeared on the communication screen. Captain Subin, congratulations on another successful first contact. How did the Altarians react to our approach? Very positively, Madam President. They're eager to join the galactic community and contribute to our shared knowledge base. I think they'll fit in well with assembly culture. President Dayun nodded with satisfaction. That makes 17 new species that have joined the assembly since we reformed the galactic government. Our exploration programs are paying off. How? Are things going with the former council species? Subin asked. Most of them are adapting well to the new system, President Da-Yun replied. The Kavari have become some of our best allies. Elder Kethmiran and the Nethys are contributing amazing scientific discoveries. Even most of the smaller species that supported the old council are finding benefits in the new way of doing things. And the Zephyrians? President Da-Yun's expression became more serious. Still causing problems. Collective Prime 7 is trying to build a coalition of species that want to return to the hierarchical system. They've had some success with a few systems on the outer rim. This didn't surprise Subin. The insect hive mind had never truly accepted the new order. Their entire psychology was based on rigid structure and unquestioning obedience to authority. The Assembly's emphasis on individual initiative and creative thinking was foreign to them. Are they a serious threat? Subin asked. Not militarily, President Dayun answered. Our defense capabilities are far superior to anything they could assemble, but they could cause political problems if they convince enough species to leave the Assembly. What's our response? We continue doing what we've been doing, President Da-Un said with a slight smile. We keep proving that cooperation works better than domination. Every successful first contact like yours makes it harder for the Zephyrians to argue that the old ways were better. After ending the communication, Captain Subin walked to the observation deck of her ship. Through the large windows, she could see the stars streaming past as the new horizons traveled through hyperspace toward home. 3 years ago, humanity had been trapped in a system that treated them as junior partners who should be grateful for any scraps of respect they received. Now they were leaders in a galactic community that valued contribution over tradition, cooperation over competition. The change hadn't been easy. Walking away from the old council had required courage and determination. Building the new assembly had required patience and compromise. But the results spoke for themselves. Trade between member species had increased dramatically. Scientific progress was advancing at unprecedented rates. Military conflicts between civilized species had become almost non-existent. Most importantly, dozens of species that had been excluded or oppressed under the old system were now full participants in galactic civilization. Captain, called Communication Officer Nari, we're receiving a message from the Kavari exploration ship Win Talon. Flight leader Korthan wants to share information about a species they've contacted in the Delta sector. Subin smiled. The key fact that Kavari and humans were now working together as equal partners would have been unthinkable under the old council system. The bird warriors had learned that cooperation was more effective than conquest, and they had become enthusiastic supporters of assembly exploration efforts. Put Flight Leader Korthan through, Subin ordered. The Kavari officer's screechy voice came over the communication system. Captain Subin, good to hear from you. We've made contact with a fascinating species called the Morlans. They're silicon-based. Life forms with incredible abilities to manipulate crystal structures. Perfect candidates for assembly membership. Excellent work, Flight Leader. We'll coordinate our exploration efforts to make sure we're covering all the promising systems in this region. This kind of cooperation was routine now, but Subin never forgot how revolutionary it was. Under the old system, each species had guarded their discoveries jealously and competed for resources and territory. Now they shared information freely and worked together to expand the boundaries of known space. As the New Horizons continued toward home, Captain Subin thought about the message they would carry to the Assembly. Another new species choosing cooperation over isolation. Another civilization joining the community of free peoples. Another proof that the new way of doing things was working. On Earth, President Daun was reviewing similar reports from exploration ships across the galaxy. Her office walls were covered with star charts showing the expanding sphere of assembly, influence. Each new member species brought their own knowledge, culture, and capabilities to the growing galactic community. Admiral So Young entered with the latest intelligence reports. Madam President, our monitoring stations are detecting increased activity in former Zephyrian space. Collective Prime 7 is definitely building some kind of coalition. How many species have joined them? President Daun asked. Maybe a dozen. Mostly small systems that were dependent on the old council hierarchy. Nothing that poses a serious military threat, but they could cause